Good evening. I call the January 15th, 2025 Apple Valley Planning Commission meeting to order. First item of business is the approval of the agenda. Any changes from staff?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, good evening. We have no changes for you tonight.
Thank you.
You're
Any
welcome.
changes from the commissioners?
Move approval. Second.
That was moved by Commissioner Schindler and seconded by Commissioner Scanlon. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The next item of business is the approval of the consent agenda. Consent agenda items are considered routine and will be enacted with a single motion without discussion unless a commissioner or a citizen requests to have any item separately considered. It will then be moved to the land use action items for consideration. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I'm sorry, moved by Commissioner Scanlon. Was it seconded by Commissioner Atlet? Plus, thank you. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. That brings us to public hearings, and we have two tonight. And I see that Mr. Benetti is going to be filling in for Alex Sharp. So our first public hearing tonight is McDonald's at Orchard Place.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. Sorry, Alex is not able to be here tonight. He fell ill, so he's recovering, hopefully at home, and the big guy has to step in and take over. So hopefully.
Be gentle on you.
Yeah, thank you. This is a request from McDonald's requesting a new facility at, they're referring to it as McDonald's at Orchard Place. There's four parts of this application. There is actually five. There's a rezoning of Outlot A from sand and gravel to RB retail business. Also a new subdivision, a conditional use permit, which is necessary for any Class 2 restaurant with a drive-through in an RB zone.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but I think I have to open the hearing first, right?
Happy to. See, this is why I leave it to the experts.
We will now open the public hearing for agenda item number 4A. The affidavit of publication for the notice of public hearing is available for inspection in the planning department. Everyone wishing to speak at the public hearing should be sure to fill out the attendance roster, include your name and your address so that accurate records can be maintained. We will begin the procedure with a brief presentation by city staff, followed by a presentation by the petitioner of the hearing. Upon the conclusion of the presentation, city staff will be asked to comment on the proposal's conformance with pertinent regulations and policies. After that, comments will be taken from the general public. Sorry.
That's okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. That's a great introduction. Again, just requested tonight the rezoning from sand and gravel to RB retail, a subdivision for a preliminary plat of the 2.5 acre lot into 2 1.5 and a 1 acre lot, approximately. Conditional use permit, as noted, for a Class 2 restaurant. A setback variance of 800 feet, which would allow for the Class 2 restaurant to be within 1,000 feet of a residential use, which we're going to get into very quickly here. Also, finally, a site plan building permit authorization for an approximate 3,800 square foot McDonald's restaurant, and that would be for just Lot 2, Block 1 only. So tonight, you're going to open the hearing, which you've done, receive comments, close the hearing, and usually the policy is to not take action on the item here tonight. However, I'm going to follow up with that at the end of our presentation. Your site location here is located right at the corner of 155th and Pilot Knob, the northwest corner, just south of the new Health Partners Clinic and just to the east of the new Schaefer Vet Clinic and just to the north of the Lenz and Byerly store to the south there. The guiding for the site is MBC, that's Mixed Business Campus. This was established by our 2040 comp plan, and there's no changes on that. Right now it is currently SG Sand and Gravel, which is subject to that rezoning application in your packet. If you've ever driven by this site, it's a pretty unremarkable site at this point. It's fairly level, fairly graded out to nothing, sitting there vacant next to the Schaefer Vet and the Health Partners to the north. Our site plan tonight will be slightly modified. Right now, what you're seeing up on the screen is one entry point coming in off the north of Chafin Vet. It's a two-way access point, primarily funnels the traffic to the south of the site for the drive-through service lanes. As you probably have recognized, McDonald's has gone pretty much to a drive-through or order and carry out service. So there's very limited need for indoor seating at this point. But the two-lane traffic will be separated here, and this is basically an escape lane around the site. So the McDonald's shown in the red or the orange, parking along the north side. There is, it might be a little hard to see here, but this original plan showed what we refer to as a switchback design, sort of a Z-shaped design for a walkway coming off of Pilot Knob, coming up and around a retaining wall to a new crosswalk here. We've decided that that's probably not an effective way. We don't think a lot of people are going to use that. So we're working with the design team for McDonald's to look at a possible walkway system over here. And if you look over, maybe I can pull up you'll note that what Chafin did here was they did a serpentine style walkway coming off of 155th here. And we feel that they might be able to do something similar here, not really necessarily serpentine, but we are going to work with them, and it's part of our recommendations in our city engineer's memo that we'll work with them on this. They also are going to move this stop bar, not here, but approximately here, with a couple of these parking spots to be taken out to accommodate for any deliveries into the facility here, and also a walkway connection to the north for the future development to the north here. So I'll take a break if you need me to, or I can keep going, or I can file back to this if we need to. Utility plan, very basic, water, sewer, gas will be made available. Again, nothing from Pilot Knob or 155th. It's all coming in from the current systems that are feeding into the Chafin Vet Clinic to the north. Our landscape plan is somewhat hardy. It's got some great varieties here. It's been verified by our natural resources staff and also our planning staff that this does meet the current, at this time, it does meet our requirements. However, there might have been an error in determining the 2.5% means value for the landscaping was they may have included some of the sod or landscape or the ground cover. We need to verify that. We also note that if our walkway comes in over here, there might be some adjustments for that landscaping. So not a lot of major changes, but we still feel they can meet all those requirements as part of a building permit submittal. Getting back into the setback variance. So as some of you may be aware, if you've been on the Planning Commission long enough, we have a requirement that a Class 2 restaurant, drive-through, fast food, whatever you want to call it, has to be at least 1,000 feet from a residential use. Right now, we're showing approximately 200 feet to the next door neighbor across the street, which is the Bowden Residential Senior Care Center, which is zoned residential, and also to the single-family zone, about 230 feet from that corner. The setback variance, again, showing 200 feet. This is a radius image that was provided by the applicants. 227.7 from the single family. Interesting to point out or note that Pilot Knob, as most of you are aware, is a very busy roadway. It's a major county roadway system. The closest point coming off this site, and as we measure all setbacks from property line to property line, is 200 feet, but the closest impact you get is to a stormwater pond for that Bowden Care Center to the east there. So also want to point out this image. There's a very significant berm along Pilot Knob, as most of you probably are aware of or seen. Good news, bad news. In this berm, there is a major fiber optic line, and the intent at first was to see if they could remove that or move it, relocate it. That's not a very expensive, or it's a very expensive endeavor to do that. So they decided to keep that, which is, it works well because that berm right now will serve as an awesome screening for those neighbors. So right now you're looking sort of at a southeast vantage point. So by leaving that berm alone, it'll help screen the building and also the parking lot. I believe, based upon, if I heard my planner, Alex Sharp, say, the parking lot will be about 9 feet below that berm on the other side. So 9 feet is a great screening for any headlights or any visual impacts from across the road. So we're very happy that they're keeping this berm. Whenever you deal with a variance, you know about the practical difficulties test. And again, I think the applicants did a great job in their narrative, responded to these difficulties. The special conditions, the granting will not be contrary to the intent of the chapter. The special conditions or circumstances do not result from actions. The granting of variance will not merely serve as a convenience to the applicant, and is the variance requested alleviate the practical difficulty. Won't go into much of these, but in your packet or report, I think City Planner Sharp addressed these very adequately and eloquently enough to say that the berm will help mitigate that noise and headlights that you want to see on any type of request for a variance of this nature. We've also indicated Pilot Knob is a very, very high traffic roadway, much like Cedar Avenue, and that past variances have been granted due to the traffic. Those past variances were recently just approved for, most recently for Popeyes along Cedar, and also for Chick-fil-A and other uses along Cedar. So we feel that we can apply the same type of exceptions here. The granting of variance will not be contrary to the intent of the chapter. Again, most of those single-family homes were developed across Pilot Knob when the property was an active mine. There's been debate about, does a mine really cause a lot of disturbance? Depends on who you ask. But we feel that with the impact, the location, proximity of the restaurant at its location, with the berm as a screen, should help alleviate those issues. Again, getting very quickly into the building elevations, you may recall, some of you did see this at the sketch plan review. We had some concerns about the look and feel of this building. There was a concern about I think there was some hardy plank siding and also some images here that they looked a little bit need of a dress up. So they came back and did some nice features here. So now they broke up the color scheme, did a different brick color. They did indicate that this brick will match very closely to the health partners just to the north, which is what we encouraged them to do. So we're very happy. They also brought some massing over the windows here, vertical massing all the way up to the ceiling point. So again, this helps accentuate the side of this building that really doesn't have a lot of features to it, because again, this would be the south side and the drive-through lane that you're going to see from 155th. So we're very happy with those plans, or those new. We feel like they did meet your request at the sketch plan review to kind of do a little bit better, and I think we think they have. For tonight, we're asking you to open the public hearing, as you already have, receive comments, and close the public hearing. Normally, the policy of the Planning Commission not take action. However, if you feel that the packet or the report provides enough information for you to make a decision or a recommendation, you're more than welcome to do so and pass that recommendation on to our council. With that, I'll stand for any questions.
Nice job, Tim, thank you.
You're welcome.
I had a question. I just want to know what you meant by the optic line, why they were concerned that they couldn't remove it. What would be the reason for removing it?
Oh, the fiber optic?
Yeah.
If you take it out, then you can drop the berm down. Basically, with the fiber optic line cable being
Understood.
buried right in that berm, it's better to be left untouched because
Understood.
they're not cheap to move.
So their goal at first would have been to remove the berm, but actually the berm
Yes.
works for a good purpose and reason.
It's a great
anyways.
purpose.
Does anybody want any more clarification on the sidewalk area or anything, or did you get that okay? I don't know who was first. Who was Commissioner Pruitt?
Yes, thanks, Chair Kurtz. Director Benetti, a quick question for you on the future of the 1.1 or 1.01 acre lot. Should we approve the McDonald's if that were to happen, if there was future interest in a RB designation or retail business in that new lot, are there any concerns with the driver access, accommodation, fire access, that new lot? Had that been considered should a new business go in there?
Commissioner Pruitt, members of the commission, at this point, we do have an idea of what's going in there, and it will be a similar drive-through style facility, but not as large as this one. Without getting into a lot of details, but it will be a simplified, more of a pickup lane, not really a drive-through lane, but it's small enough that it should accommodate the proposed use. And this access point on Chafin was meant to either serve either one or two additional uses in this area. So it was large enough that we knew the expectation was that there was going to probably be one, at least, maybe two uses coming in here, and we're proven to be two uses. So we feel that the access point on the English is enough. We never would have allowed any access on the pilot knob, or the county wouldn't, nor would we have allowed any access on 155th. So we feel it should work just fine.
Okay, thank you, Tim.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Mahomed?
Thank you, Madam Chair. With respect to the berm, I'm just wondering, is there anything that could or would be done in connection with the landscaping plan? Or is that just going to be left as is, as shown and depicted in the picture?
Yes, great question. Commissioner Mahold, members of the commission. So if you look at this landscape plan today, there is some landscaping that's going to be placed on this east side of the site. This black dark line is a retaining wall that was proposed originally for this switchback walkway, but that's going away. I believe they also talked about providing for, Evan, can you help, what kind of grasses, that the landscaping grasses?
Madam Chair, members, Commissioner, Director Benetti. Maybe if I could elaborate a little on the berm itself.
Please.
We will encourage and review that updated landscaping plan. McDonald's has been great to work with from the standpoint of we feel like they've been very cooperative and invested in the pedestrian connectivity as much as the city and county are. There is a point of the berm where that becomes county right-of-way. So as we revise that landscaping plan now without sidewalk and retaining wall and potentially relocating some of the landscaping shown in the southwest portion of the site along the eastern side of the site, we just will keep in mind that we'll have to stay out of the right-of-way, which is where a fair chunk of that massing of the berm is. So I'm sure will do their best to accommodate and plant that space evenly so it looks good for their site, because I'm sure that's what they would like to.
Okay.
Thank you.
What you
Answer the
said.
question?
Yeah, because when you look at the picture, it looks a little stark, and especially kind of as I fully agree with the screening aspects of it for headlights and noise and things like that, but also having some sort of aesthetic view from those. Obviously it's across a very busy street, but something to dress it up a little bit would
Sure.
be nice.
Commissioner Scanlon?
Madam Chair, my question, I'm going to start with Tim, is coming out of this Larkin-Hoffman report, starting on page 6. We were just talking about the berm and screening, which helps with noise, lights, and so forth. And I'm going to refer to the lower paragraph titled odor.
Yes.
The first two paragraphs, that is just basically dealing with the minimum requirements by the state, correct?
Correct.
And that's what they're building this McDonald's to.
Correct.
So they're not doing anything over and above to try to mitigate the odor that we talked about during the sketch plan.
Yes. Commissioner Scanlon, I know that's been in my previous experience working with fast food restaurants, I know that that has been sort of a bane of some local communities about the overwhelming smell that can produce from these fast food type restaurants. I think the new state code rules and provision or standards on some of these buildings of these nature, the grease hoods and everything else, I think they do probably a much better job today than they did even 5 or 10 years ago of eliminating those odors before they escape out their vent systems. So I think they're very, very well maintained or controlled, controlling of their odors today. I think there's been some anecdotal comments from some members that, you know, even the current McDonald's restaurant, you can't smell it. And, you know, even when you're walking out there on a even cold or even hot summer days, you really can't smell those restaurants anymore, because I think just because of the new technology that went into the systems inside that prevent all those odors from escaping out the building. So, and I think when they say it's a minimum, I think those minimums are probably adequate enough, but I think McDonald's does a great job in helping to eliminate those odors coming out.
My concern is, though, that we do have an ordinance there for a reason, that it's
Yep.
1,000 feet. And we have direct line of sight to both of these residential areas,
True,
regardless if it's Pilot Knob and it's busy or not.
that's very true.
And since I've been on the commission, we've been very steadfast in maintaining that. And you pointed out a couple of instances where we made adjustments to that, but there was an argument there that could support it. I'm struggling right here because at the end, we're going to be asked to why we're going to vote for the variance and what is our justification. And I'm not seeing anything here that McDonald's is doing to mitigate that at all, other than, you know, the fact that, you know, they're kind of late to the game in terms of the piece of property. If it was further south, we wouldn't have a discussion. It would be, you know, going forward. Except we have residential properties directly across the street from this, and the ordinance is there for a reason. So I'm trying to get a hold of that, and
Sure.
I'm struggling a bit. And then I'm going to go with that, in that same paragraph, the last sentence, where they talk about mitigating potential odor. I mean, odor is odor from cooking. And then they talk about landscaping to serve as a natural barrier to airflow in the slow dissipate. I don't see how that applies, how they can make that argument. And that's something that they can come forward tonight and talk about when they have their opportunity to talk.
Commissioner Scanlon, members of the commission, I would welcome them to come up and address that for you if you feel.
Yeah. Like I said, if this was further south, there wouldn't be a discussion, but there is a discussion because of where the location is to the residential, and I'm not seeing anything that they've done so far to mitigate that. And
Fair
I
point.
did ask that question specifically during the sketch plan. Is there an option to do something differently to better control the, I don't see anything here, so.
I'm going to interrupt there. If you look at page 7, doesn't it say, as discussed by the planning commission during the sketch plan review? You see that second paragraph? So it looks like they were trying to address the
Well,
discussion.
they basically said they weren't going to do anything. And I asked them to come back with an option, that some way of mitigating it with the proximity to the residential area, and it appears that that hasn't been done, so.
Any other questions?
No,
Oh,
thank you.
Are you done? Are you
Yeah.
done? Okay.
Thank you, Tim.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? I would welcome the applicant.
I think we're up.
Did you draw the short stick?
Yeah, well, I'm second, so I'm trying to move myself up here so that you don't get the spotlight.
Planning Commission Chair, good evening.
Good
My name's Eli Sankey. I'm with Kimley Horn and Associates on behalf of McDonald's today. Today I just want to highlight some of the changes we've made, such as sketch plan review. Hopefully it's next on the docket here. I sent it to Alex on like Monday. Said he was gonna load it in.
If you don't mind. I think Alex did have
Sure.
scheduled to have included a revised site plan. We don't have it for you because his computer, he locked it before he went off yesterday, so I was unable to get to it. I'm sure it's still sitting in his laptop right now, so if it's important to you or imperative that you want to see that, then, we could probably delay the application. I don't have the ability to bring that up, and I did not see anything in the file system, so.
Would there be a big change to anything? I mean, what would be the,
I would have them address that, and if it's significant enough for you to want to see those plans back before you, to make a final decision, you have that right too, or if you're comfortable of having them work with us, we are too. We feel that this site is comfortable enough that we could work with them.
what would everybody like to see? Are you okay with what we got? Everybody?
Continue.
Continue, absolutely.
So as previously discussed, McDonald's has agreed to provide a premium brick product for this location. The commission requested that supplemental articulation along the building at each drive-through was put in place, and that was horizontally and vertical articulation was added. And Tim described that very well, so happy to answer any questions that you may have on those architectural elevations.
Do you want to go into that picture at least?
I can go to that, yeah. A lot of clicking if I can find it here. This is my next slide. So there's the original sketch plan, and then, yeah, here we go with kind of those proposed elevations, and you can see the horizontal articulation, or excuse me, vertical. The horizontal's a little bit harder to see.
And then on the side, you did more of the brown stonework going up, right?
Correct, yep, just to provide a little bit more separation and stand out. And then there's also some elevated darker metal panels above the drive-through
Right.
that help induce that articulation as well. And I'm gonna go back. Don't click all the way through again. Just want to show the aerial version. Here we go. Just keep it here. Vicket here is an aerial of the site, so the 200-foot distance shared in the staff report was a reflection of property line to property line, which Tim talked about. The circle shown here is actually from the northeast corner of the building. And we thought it'd be valuable to show that the restaurant and drive-through are over 315 feet from the nearest residential lot corner. In addition, in reference to the senior living facility with the large stormwater basin located on the west side, that section of the property is inaccessible. So the practical setback for the building to that senior living facility is closer to about 420 feet, which far exceeds what was cited as separation. Site plan next, bear with me for a second. This will do for now. The attached plan shows the pedestrian access point that was located off of Pilot Knob. And this was really based on a recommendation from the city, but does require a robust retaining wall. So that's shown here in black. The height of that wall gets up to about 6 feet in certain locations and tries to buffer that about 10 feet of grade from the road up to the site. While we're willing to bear the significant hardship for this project, the city has reconsidered the proposed access from Pilot Knob. We're excited to hear this. This alleviates a substantial burden to the project. We will defer to the city's recommendation for creating a desirable connection. And then lastly, just want to talk about landscapes. We can stay here as well. In response to the concerns of headlight glare, ornamental grasses have been densely positioned along that east curb line. A little bit hard to tell here, along with some densely planted evergreen shrubs. And these will reach a minimum height of 3 feet, and then they can grow up to at least 5 feet tall at full maturity. And we feel this will adequately shield headlight glare. And we also wanted to acknowledge the large topographic difference that I talked to already about the height of that berm being about 10 feet. And then along with the relocation of this retaining wall and sidewalk, that should free up about 6 additional feet, and we can work with planning to get some adequate landscaping in the area too and make that more robust if that's needed. I'll turn it over to Megan.
Thank you.
Well, good evening. I'm Megan Rogers. I'm the author of that report that was earlier cited, and here to talk a little bit and answer any of the questions that you might have with regards to some of the mitigation strategies that we're employing on this site. So kicking it off with odor. So I think your analysis, Commissioner Scanlon, is accurate, but I think it's a little bit more nuanced than that, and I'll tell you why that is. So in our letter, we talk about how odor is regulated in the state of Minnesota. And typically, air emissions are regulated by the MPCA. There are standards that are associated with it so that they can be testable. But the MPCA elected to essentially let go of its authority in that space and to have the Minnesota Department of Health that regulates restaurants and restaurant odors take over that from a licensing perspective. And so the state has adopted some pretty restrictive guidelines with regards to how sites can be established and what are the minimums that must be in place to mitigate noise, smells, all of those things that are associated with a licensing for a restaurant like this in the state of Minnesota. So of course, our project complies with all of those. But beyond that, McDonald's has a lot of experience with its own brand and with this use. And so for that reason, we utilize and are installing within this facility low emissions grillers and fryers that are intended to mitigate those particular concerns that you addressed at the concept plan, the sketch plan review. And then furthermore, there are site design elements that are designed to address those concerns as well. Primarily, it's through the integration of a significant ventilation system that pushes any of those odors that would not be trapped by the grease traps, the interceptors, the hoods, the vents that are already installed internally within the building. For that air that's pushed outwards and not otherwise trapped is pushed directly upwards. And that matters for a number of reasons. So this is a former mining site, right? And in the mining context, oftentimes we talk about how dust and particles travel across and out of the mine and potentially impact surrounding property owners. The same thing is true with odor. So directing odor upwards and then integrating site design and grade changes are ways that help dust particles, because we can visualize those, help those disperse in ways that do not have impacts on surrounding property owners. The same thing is true with odor. And so in addition to the integration of the system within McDonald's itself, we have a strategically designed ventilation system that we believe sufficiently mitigates potential risk to adjacent homeowners and some of those concerns around odor that you might have. So that's my pitch to you all on odor. I think the other thing that's really important to note here this evening is the sort of the location of this, and staff did an excellent job of talking about that, is that the 6 lanes that separate this property from the residential properties make a difference in terms of how this feels as a permitted use. Similarly, within this district itself, you have many retail uses that may have noise, light, odor generations. Things like laundromats are a permitted use. Things like auto body shops are also a permitted use within the district. And we think that this neatly fits in to the city's overall plan for the district in consistency with the approved zoning itself. Sort of running through also, and I probably can talk a lot about how noise travels, how odors travel, but the best thing, and I guess probably the best thing that I can point you all to, are the sites that are already functioning within your city that are either closer to residential or similar distance from residential. And so Commissioner Scanlon addressed those sites that were non-conforming, that were transformed. That's the Popeye site. But Chick-fil-A was a new site, and that was approved by the city and has not had impact on the surrounding residential. Another example is Culver's. Culver's is about 100, let's see, what is Eli? Eli measured it for me. I think it's 112 feet from a multifamily residential building, and that has not proven to be a significant impact. And our standards are, of course, absolutely the same bar as those functioning sites today. And so with that in mind, we are absolutely here to answer any questions. We have Robert from McDonald's who can answer operational questions if you have them, and I am happy to answer any land use question. Oh, I have one more land use fact for you, and that is traffic is one of the questions that I think has been asked about this site. Interesting data point. From the entrance of the residential site on both the senior living facility as well as the single-family homes, over 1,600 feet in terms of driving distance from this site to where you would access McDonald's. And so when we think about how traffic impacts a neighborhood, how it effectively flows and doesn't create turning problems for residents, there's a lot of distance in terms of how this site actually works. And that's, of course, because of the adjacency to Pilot Knob and the fact that there's only a single entrance for this particular facility that's off of 155th. So you're not having multiple entrance points. You're not creating stacking considerations. So for those reasons, we believe that this is appropriately suited for this area of the city, that it's consistent with your 2040 plan, consistent with the underlying zoning districts that are contemplated for this site, and we stand ready to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Megan. That was a good explanation. I keep thinking of Rosemount on 42. They have a lot of fast foods right there, and there's houses right across from there too. So.
And just immediately south of here, there's Freddy's. That's 115 feet from residential. So there are many. So again, those sites that have been established since the standards put into place by MDH have been adopted are adjacent to residential properties and even sometimes share the same side of the road as those residential properties and have not had those impacts. And for those reasons, we believe that that the concerns that you have raised have been sufficiently addressed so that they won't they'll meet the policy goals of the underlying ordinance.
You might want to stay there.
Yeah.
Commissioner Scanlon?
Madam Chair?
Is it for Megan?
Yes. Okay. For Megan. This site alone has made it, I think, very easy for you to be able to mitigate whether it's the noise concern, lighting concern. The berm was there. The berm's not going anywhere. And in terms of discussion on landscaping, you're well under the landscaping minimum, so that would have been, regardless, that would be taken care of. So, but it still comes back that we have an ordinance that needs to be 1,000 feet away from residential areas. And there's a reason why Apple Valley has been consistently looked at as a desired place to live, because we have stringent, very good standards. And it's come back to show in those ratings. And as I mentioned, you have a situation here where you have a restaurant that has direct line of sight both to these residential areas, which I don't think apply to the other references that you've made. And like I said, we very sparingly provided variances to other restaurants. And I was looking for, and I don't believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that other than what state standard is, what the McDonald's standard is, over and above that to try to mitigate that, to justify a variance, I haven't seen that.
So what I would suggest to you is that the McDonald's standard is over and above the state standard and was specifically looked at for this building to think about collaboratively with staff and with our design team to make adjustments to the site to address those concerns. And we think we've created a higher level of efficiency in terms of our placement of operating systems and again, those 3 levels of control. So number 1, the state standards. Number 2, the types of systems that we install within our operations. And then also the directionality of the ventilation systems on the site. So a ventilation system on the site could very well, and at different sort of price points, can be directed across the roadway and may very well be in other McDonald's and is done so in other McDonald's. So this site is particularly geared to address that particular concern and with the directionality of how it's ventilating the site. And so that's what I would say is the significant change between the concept plan and today.
Thank you, Megan. Oh, sorry.
I had a follow-up question for Tim then.
Anybody else have a question for Megan? No. Thank you, Megan.
All right, thank you very much.
Tim?
I guess this is a hard question. If we're not going to maintain or be willing to let the 1,000 feet go to the wayside, do we need to set this aside and then go back and look at what the ordinance says and what the distance on the ordinance is? That we're going to pick and choose because McDonald's supposedly does their ventilation system one way versus somebody else.
Right.
That
Commissioner
we're treating
Scanlon.
everybody in the same manner.
Yeah, Commissioner Scanlon, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. I don't know I hope I'm hearing the question right, but if you're questioning whether or not do we need to reevaluate the 1,000-foot separation from residential, it's a great question. Sometimes when you ask for a variance from a certain code section, in my experience as a planner, when you ask for a variance for time and time again, it's usually an indicator or indication to change your code. And some cities have reacted to that in sometimes a positive manner by saying, yeah, let's re-examine this. And we're about to do this on a conditional use permit requirement for allowing for alcohol sales inside of a retail store or a retail business. We felt that that's, dare I say, folly. We don't need to worry about that because we have liquor licenses or requirements that can address that properly. Conditional use permit, we don't need it for that. Here again, we could always examine whether or not the 1,000 feet is relevant or pertinent in today's standards, because we have heard from our building officials and also from the applicant that these systems that these restaurants are putting in, I mean, they're very expensive for a reason, because they have to be, and they want to be, because they want to make sure that they don't, number one, they provide a safe environment for their workers, but also they're not a disturbance to the people around them. And I think what you see today is nothing compared to what it was even 5-10 years ago. So I think it's a good question that we could probably look at or address if we had to.
I'm not quite going to question what the McDonald's is doing in terms of that they're going over and above. If that's what they're saying they're doing, then that's what they're doing. But we still have to treat them no different than if it was a independent restaurant going in that didn't have that type of secondary or step within their system, that they both get treated the same way within the ordinance.
Yep.
And basically what we're being asked of us is to step that aside and treat McDonald's differently than we would do anybody else that would be up here.
I wouldn't point out McDonald's individually. I think we've given indication, or we've given allowances for other uses, class 2 type restaurants.
Yeah.
Not just for McDonald's, but others. They're simply asking for an allowance, a variance, to do what others have done. If, I imagine when the 1,000-foot standard was put in place probably years ago, because I think our ordinance has some history to it, it was probably purposefully to protect neighborhoods, because some of those restaurants back in the days probably weren't good neighbors. They'd probably put out some smells that you probably just didn't want to have, emanating through your windows. Be that as it may, things change, technology changes, and we can look at those. I don't think we're doing anything different than what we've done for other Class 2 type restaurants, McDonald's or otherwise. But but you can still weigh this variance on this application alone. There is no precedent-setting application on a variance. You should always weigh the variance that's before you tonight on its own merits.
I agree.
If you feel you're in support of that, you can vote the way you want to. If you're opposed to it, you should absolutely indicate that your opposition is because if you want to maintain the code is current. We do have 1,000 foot. You can stick to that.
Well, it's not like we're asking for 100 feet, or, I mean, you're asking for considerably.
800 feet is considerable
Yeah,
on the grand scheme of
majority
variances,
of
yes.
what the ordinance is
Yep.
being asked to be vacated or set aside.
Yep, I agree.
That's my stumbling block. I mean, I don't have an objection to the work that McDonald's done, and I appreciate from a design perspective the added work they did working with you and the overall design of it and everything. I don't have an issue with it. It's just this one component that I'm struggling with. So,
Noted.
appreciate it, Tim.
Yep, you're welcome.
I'm just gonna say it in my opinion again, just from working next to a McDonald's for 30 years. Never smelled, never in 30 years. And it was a lot closer than 200 feet, just my opinion. And the other thing is the 6 lanes there, I think sometimes you're gonna get more whiff of exhaust than you are of anything else. But the whole thing about this, is there another area in this spot that they can move over to or anything? I mean, is this the only area they can go to?
Madam Chair, members of the commission. Sure, I mean, could they have selected another site? Absolutely. The developer that they're working with has rights to some of the other land on the other side of English. So sure, they could have moved. This wasn't, I think this was just an ideal site for them, obviously for the corner location, and I'm sure they're paying a premium price for that. So you get what you pay for, and but yeah, there's always but their choice, their right to ask for the site, and that's what they're doing or presenting before you tonight, is just the right to develop here.
Thank you. Commissioner Pruitt?
Yes, thanks, Chair Kurtz and Director Benetti. One thing, if we get down to discussing the actions,
Sure.
The list of 4 actions in the staff report, there were 5 on the initial slide
Yes.
that you presented. So I tried to make notes real quick and catch up to, if they were the same or not. I was hoping for some clarity.
Great catch, Commissioner Pruitt, and should be noted that as part of the conditional use permit resolution on the backside, I think it's the last one in your packet before the staff memos, the variance was folded into that conditional use permit process. I believe that was at a recommendation from our city attorney. No? Okay. Should they have a separate resolution for the variance?
Madam Chair, you should have a separate action or separate motion for conditional use, separate one for the variance.
Thank you.
Those are 2 separate items.
The 2 separate. Did you get that? Yeah. Okay.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, please.
I know in the packet there's a draft resolution, but that would go to council if you want to just focus on what the action items are on the agenda or in the report.
Okay. Okay, well, this is an open hearing, so if there's anybody in the audience or in the crowd that would like to come up and discuss, if you do, please announce your name and address? Looks like there isn't, so do I get a motion for anybody? Oh. I was going to add something. Anybody want to make a motion? Staff, yes.
Madam Chair, and I don't know if I heard it, but before making a motion, you should close the public hearing.
We haven't done one of those in a while.
You have not.
It would have hit me sooner or later. If there are no further comments, I will close the public hearing. It is the policy of the Planning Commission not to act on an item on the same night as its public hearing. The Planning Commission will weigh all comments and information received tonight in its deliberations at future meetings. This item will continue to appear on future Planning Commission agendas until a recommendation on the petition can be forwarded to City Council. Now I will take a motion.
Does this need to be 5 separate motions?
There's going to be 2 separate ones. So, right?
There's 5 separate
There's 5.
actions.
Yeah, there has to be these.
It has to be the ones on the agenda right here.
Then, Madam Chair, I recommend approval of a zoning map amendment rezoning of Outlot A, Orchard Place 4th Edition, from SG Sand and Gravel to RB Retail Business.
Say them all. I believe you say them all
Oh, I thought we had to do them separately. No?
separately.
Yeah, we have to do them each individually.
Second.
Okay.
Each
That was
each
a-
item on the agenda is a separate
Separate one action.
Separate motion.
Got it. That was a motion made by Commissioner Sandal, and I think Commissioner Maholwald seconded it. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay.
Nay.
Motion carries.
Madam Chair, I recommend approval of a subdivision by preliminary plat of a 2.52 acre lot into a 1.51 lot and a 1.01 acre lot, subject to conditions in the draft resolution.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Sandal, I believe seconded by Commissioner Maholwald. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay.
Nay.
Motion carries.
Madam Chair, I recommend approval of a conditional use permit for a Class 2 restaurant with a drive-through on Lot 2, Block 1, McDonald's Orchard Place, subject to conditions in the draft resolution.
Second.
That was motion made by Commissioner Sandal and seconded by Commissioner Schindler. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay.
Nay.
Motion carries.
Madam Chair, I recommend approval of an 800-foot setback variance for a Class 2 restaurant with a drive-through on Lot 2, Block 1, McDonald's Orchard Place, subject to conditions in the draft resolution.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Sandal, seconded by Commissioner Halas. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay.
Nay.
Motion carries.
And Madam Chair, I recommend approval of site plan building permit authorization for a 3,859 square foot McDonald's restaurant on Lot 2, Block 1, McDonald's Orchard Place.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Sandal, seconded by Commissioner Schindler. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Nay.
Motion carries. Thank you. Brings us to the next open hearing, public hearing. Why do I say open hearing? This one is Rockport, and Tim's going to have this one too, it looks like. So we now will open the public hearing for agenda item number 4B. The affidavit of publication for the notice of public hearing is available for inspection in the planning department. Everyone wishing to speak at this public hearing should be sure to fill out the attendance roster. Include your name and your address so that the accurate records can be maintained. We will begin the procedure with a brief presentation by city staff, followed by a presentation by the petitioner of the hearing. Upon the conclusion of the presentation, city staff will be asked to comment on their proposal's conformance with pertinent regulations and policies. After that, comments will be taken from the general public. Tim.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the Commission, before you tonight is as was introduced, a request from Rockport LLC for a comprehensive plan amendment for most of their property on what they refer to as the gravel pit or the AVR pit. The applicant's request, as noted in the packet, was to revise the guidance stating that commercial retail uses are preferred to be located along County Road 42. We also have removing a reference from the comp plan guide, figure 4.2, which we're going to highlight here in a few seconds, for the mixed-use business campus on Rockport's property west of the future Johnny Cake Ridge Road. Also add a land use industrial category or land use overview or over area to area C in the conceptual land use diagram of the same figure 4.2. And this would be on Rockport's property east of future Johnny Cake Ridge Road. Highlighted here in the hatched area is basically the current perimeter or extent of the AVR Inc. Sand and gravel mining area. What you're seeing here, this line here, would be the future extension of Johnny Cake Ridge Road. So when we refer to the east side versus west side, it's basically west of Johnny Cake, east of Johnny Cake, future. So Johnny Cake has not been developed yet, but anticipated to be happening in the near future. Most of the site on the east side has been reclaimed or mined out. It's now being used for stockpiling. If you happen to visit the site or look over in this area here, you'll note that this is where currently McNamara is the leaseholder or leasing company from AVR Rockport, where they are currently mining this area out, and that area is still ongoing. So at this point, there's no plans for development here, but there will be something on this site, which we'll get into very quickly. Currently, the site is zoned sand and gravel. So all this area is sand and gravel, except for this RB site, retail business. Some of you may have been on the commission a few years ago when Menards, before they went into their site across the road, this was originally going to be a preferred, one of their sites. That site fell through, but the zoning stayed in place. This green out area is an institutional zone for the current substation that you probably drive by thousands of times and don't really notice it until you is pointed out to you, but no changes on there as well. The comprehensive plan currently guides this area as a MBC, and that's Mixed Business Campus. So this is the current guiding on the site. As the report indicated, this area was intended to be a high-quality setting for general office, corporate office, research and development, light manufacturing, and office showroom. The city also had a strong desire to attract health facilities. For those of you who probably don't want to remember this, but a few years ago we had a global pandemic that really put a damper on the office environment in the corporate office world. And we started seeing a really a dramatic pivot, turnaround, 180, whatever you want to call it. Offices were shutting down. They were starting to close up. Folks were more inclined to start working from home. So the office environment or the office industry really suffered, and it's still suffering. So the hope back then when we prepared our plan about 8 years ago was to have a great office manufacturing, light manufacturing, or better yet, some type of healthcare system here. That's probably not panning out very, very effectively. And the developer can speak more to that, and also the realtor that they've hired or their local real estate professional. So be that as it may, whenever you have a comprehensive plan in place, it's not absolute. You can always pivot, and you can always address a growing demand or a growing need or request a change on that plan. So again, you don't have to wait every 10 years when we update our plans. You can always ask for amendment day after we adopt a plan. And this is what they're doing today. So what you're seeing here is also in the purple area. If it's hard to see, but the purple area is that mixed business campus. We're keeping the commercial zone, or the commercial land use, where that current retail business is located here. The HD is high density residential, and also LD, low density. So the plan was to have this more of the campus, the retail, high-density housing with some limited low-density housing also here, which is consistent with what's happening to the south here. So again, a little premature to talk about this area, but more focused on this area in the next few meetings coming up. So what you're seeing is that C commercial, LD low density, HD high density. So number one, revise the guidance stating that commercial retail uses are preferred to be located. In our current NBC, we say that such uses should generally be located along County Road 42. This is our suggestion, which is highlighted here. Again, we're just asking that we don't want to lose focus on our preference that we keep the retail or the other uses instead of industrial along the Highway 42 corridor. And we're going to get into that very quickly here. This figure 4.2 that was addressed in your packet, this has been affectionately referred to as the blob plan. It's really not an affectionate term or a disaffectionate term. It's just what we refer to it with our applicant and their consultants. It's a blob, a plan that shows the different layers or blobs in and around this area. And again, if you follow my cursor, we're primarily focused on this area here. This is where that MBC was created on. And you'll note the different colors. So the G, excuse me, the blue, the area, this is more for an interior light industrial office type campus setting. The C was more of a retail, H as well, a mix of retail. The A and the B's up here, retail, and again, office, medical uses as well. We also had a conceptual land use diagram with this map that showed what we'd like to see as a percentage of those, sort of a breakout of uses. So you're looking at office, hotel, medical, commercial retail, office, hotel, medical. It looks more confusing than it really should be, but it's just, it was a guide that we wanted to have in our comp plan to just provide for a backdrop for any development that came through once we knew that this site was going to become available for development. You know, the intent was, it was addressed very, very numerous times in our 2040 plan, as some of you may have noticed or been part of, that this was a key part of our last remaining part open spot for development in this area. So we have a lot of stake in this, and we want to make sure we do it right, and we want to help the landowners do it right as well. Under our adopted land use plan, again, you're looking at the A. This is a little close up. I should have gone to this first. So you have office, hotel, medical, retail, and it just continues to go on right down the line, medical, office, industrial. So at this point, we looked at, there's the mix of uses in the MBC includes the following. These are the percentages that were prescribed in our 2040 plan that this plan should provide for at least 55 to 65% office, 10 to 20% of light industrial or manufacturing, 10% office warehouse, and 5% commercial and retail uses. Right now, again, as plans develop or as current situations present themselves, these percentages are probably not realistic anymore. So the applicant has suggested and is asking that we simply just remove all those percentage requirements and just simply revert back to fast forward to the MBC. So the MBC would basically become all of this purple, which still provides for light industrial, mix of commercial, mix of retail, and also we're also maintaining the housing elements on the west side here, so there's no changes in those areas as well. However, when we get to other parts of this land use plan, or this amendment, this mixed business campus is mentioned and is highlighted here in many text versions of our comp plan. So there's a lot of work that has to be done. If we accept this land use amendment request by the developer or by the applicant, we have to go in there and change a lot that addresses, like the percentages here under the economic development potential. We have to change all this area over here. So there's a lot of work that needs to go into this plan. Economic development, again, a number of areas where that mixed business campus is noted, so we have to make a lot of changes here as well. Also, here, highlighted here, and again, I won't bore you with all the details, but there's a lot of information here that still has to be addressed as part of this request. Our current comp plan, we still show this area as purple. I'm just going to call it out, a light purple or light lavender. And this is a mixed business campus. In our current 2040 plan, same thing. It just shows it as a mixed business campus. Here's a highlighted or zoomed in effect to that. Again, we would revert back to this, essentially eliminate this map 4.2 and go straight to this, which would provide for an allowance for that mix of light industrial and retail commercial uses in this area, depending on what the developer brings forward. Again, we're still asking for that any retail or the smaller commercial uses be provided for along that Highway 42 corridor or that view shed area up here. We'd hate to see a big light industrial or industrial type building up there. We just don't think it would fit. We'd prefer to see that more as an internal use, which you're going to see later on. Right now, focus on the land use is what we're asking for you tonight. And again, it's a policy of the Planning Commission to not take action the evening of the hearing. If the commission concurs, staff recommends the following action. You've opened public hearing, receive all your public testimony, and close the hearing if you feel necessary. You can also table that hearing to the next meeting if you feel necessary. We are proposing to bring this back either at the February 5th or the February 19th regular meeting. At this point, I kind of went through this a little bit fast and furious. If you have any questions, I can go back to any materials or slides. The applicant's attorney is also here, and also their real estate professional to answer any type of questions as to reasons why they're doing this, their need, or their justifications. Eventually, you're going to see something that follows this request in the next few weeks. There's a separate application that's under review that I don't want to make sure, for tonight's purposes, focus on just the land use request, the comp plan amendment request. The other item that you may have heard about that has been basically let out of the bag, we want to make sure we do not talk about that at this point because that would be too premature. There's a public hearing set for that at the next meeting. With that, I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you, Tim. Commissioner Scanlon?
Madam Chair, Tim, so there's two things we're looking at. The idea of more retail focused on 42 and then doing away with all the percentages but leaving the designations.
In a quick to the cut matter, yes. It's getting rid of this blob plan 4.2 map.
Right.
It's just the developer, the applicant, owner feels like it's not workable. It's not tenable for them, and they would prefer to have just go back to the straight MBC, mixed business campus designation. Give them the right, the flexibility to float in anything that works for them. In the development world, usually you put your land up for sale. A developer comes to you, it's either allowed or not allowed, and they just want to be able to have the ability to say, yes, you're allowed, here's how we can fit you in here. Can we carve off a 10-acre, a 50-acre, whatever acre parcel they need for their development, and then they can make it, and then they can come to work with us, and we can help them with their zoning or any type of land use applications that come with it.
So is there an advantage? I feel like we've done these in the past where we've just waited until we have something to proposal and then bring in and make the changes at that time versus possibly coming in, make this change, then have a secondary change later on.
Correct. Right now, there is a request for a rezoning that's going to come forward to you. Right now, that zoning, it would require, or this land use would have to be amended to make that rezoning a possibility. Tonight, we'd like you to just absorb what you've learned from or gleaned from the report. Take your comments from both the developers' representatives and the comments from the public. There's a few of them out there that have been noted in your packet. Take careful consideration of all those. Eventually, what we'd like to do is bring this back to you and have a final recommendation based upon what your thoughts or feelings are. And you're going to see a progression of applications coming your way that will make sense at the next meeting, probably on the February 5th, where we have scheduled another public hearing on a separate matter that reflects on this.
Thank you, Tim.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Schindler.
Madam Chair, Tim, excuse me. I realize it's a lot of changes that are going to have to be done. When you look at that conceptual land use diagram, all these areas that we're talking about pretty much have any use they'd want to use.
Yeah, I mean,
So
so this area on the east side, I'm gonna call it the east side again. So that's a light industrial use, so that would fit. They're also asking for this area of C to be changed to a light industrial. That was a part of their original request. However, if we just simply revert back to, if we just simply say, all right, if we just go back, I want to say, we pull the figure 4.2 map, the block plan off the books. We revert back to NBC. This basically gives the ability to do the mix of, hence the reason mixed business campus. It's a mix of, you can do light industrial, you can still do office, you can still do some limited retail commercial uses in there as well. So we want to give them, or they're asking for the flexibility to basically develop this in any form, fashion, in a mixed business campus setting, because that's what they set this up for. That's what we encouraged them to provide, was a mixed business campus. Now, hindsight being 2020, I think the original goal was we would have loved to have seen like a nice medical campus or a nice, dare I say, medical technology or a chip manufacturer or something similar. Also some ancillary commercial retail uses as well. We still feel they can do that. And this just gives them more of a broader brush to paint their land with and respond to developers that come to them and say, I'd like to have this. I'd like to buy X amount from you. Will this fit? And
and that's exactly how this was designed, and that's why
correct.
all those different uses are allowed.
Correct. So so this mixed business campus land use was created specifically for a mixed business campus. What we did on top of it was we provided for this block plan. And this plan was not just throwing random colors up on a map. It was meant to provide for a way for our engineers to specifically make sure that we could provide for all the services in this area. So basically what you're seeing here are, this whole area's been modeled to accommodate those different areas or those different uses that we were expecting to go in there. If you take away all those, because each use has a different impact on the systems that our engineers love to model and love to number crunch until cows come home. Eventually what happens is they come up with a table or formula that says, yes, we can accommodate this kind of development for this amount of water that we know we can produce or we're allowed to produce, or how much sewage or transportation needs, whatever. So you take that away, it kind of opens the door for, okay, what now? What if they did all industrial? What would that do? So now we have to go back and remodel that area and find out, can they still do all industrial? We hope they don't. And it's not a hope, it's just, we prefer that. We like to see, make sure that this still remains a mixed business campus, and we'd like to hold them to that. So we would love to be able to work with them still, as we have, and still able them to develop this area as a mixed business, but not necessarily have to follow this concept plan, which they indicated that they really weren't keen to in the beginning, and I don't think they ever really wanted this part of the plan, but it was adopted as part of the comp plan. So this would have to come out if they want to change or go back to just the MBC.
I mean, I guess I agree with Commissioner Scanlon in the fact that all the uses are allowed in all these different areas. And if they come back, I mean, this happens all the time. We decided this area works better for this, well then how do you accommodate on the rest of the site?
Right.
You make the, I mean, that's how it's designed.
Correct.
So I just don't know what the reason would be to go through all of that updating work.
Well, I'm sure the reason for the updating is just because the owners probably are not getting any bites from retails and stuff like that. I mean, with the change of COVID, I mean, everything changed. I mean, I can understand their reasoning for wanting to do it, as long as, like you said, they didn't do all industrial, but I guess I don't have a problem with changing it, just for that reason. I mean, we want to see it developed. We don't want to see it sitting there for years and years with no occupancy, so.
True. And we do know that area to the, I'll say west of John and Cake. We do know, as I indicated, it's still actively being mined. And I've heard a number of years that are left to mine that site. And I don't want to speak on behalf of Rockport. So you're probably not going to, we're not too worried about that area at this point right now. The east side, we're getting to the point where you're going, as I said, you're going to see something and taking this plan out, changing that area, allowing for just the various uses. It would accommodate what they're proposing later on down the road. And later on, when that site on the west side starts to develop, we'd still love to see this develop like this. In fact, I'm confident, if I'm still around or walking upright, I hope that this does still develop in this form or pattern. I think this is a great plan. This works. And I think it would be great to have that retail, that interior light industrial or office type use surrounded by the retail commercial elements on that north and that west side. Also the housing opportunities. That brown spot up on that north, or on that west corner here, love to see that turned into a smaller apartment facility. And also look at this area here for possibly low density or maybe even a medium density residential, a townhome style development, as a good buffer between those single families, that Regatta neighborhood to the south and everything to the north of that. So that's where planners' minds kind of wander. So.
All right.
Commissioner Scanlon?
Madam Chair, I guess a couple additional comments just for it. You know, when we did the comp plan, and one of the things that's always been discussed and was hopeful in the desire for this property is the idea of bringing more jobs to Apple Valley versus as it is currently, people are leaving more than they're staying for jobs. And that was the big hope, and I still desire to see that that doesn't get lost in the discussion of what's going to be proposed or down the road here for this. The second thing, on 42, we're going to have limited entry-exit accesses along there with the county? Is there just,
Yes. What you're seeing here is, what, I'll point to these real quick. You're seeing these arrows that come in, and some of these are for either right-in, right-outs, or three-quarter access points. This would, obviously, Johnny Cake Ridge here would have been a full access, right? Signalized here. Also to 153rd, tie in here, roundabout. So all these roadway systems were intended to provide for sort of a breakup of the area. You're probably going to see a different scenario on this side, but those access points on 42 are probably not going to be allowed or needed up here based upon what you're going to be seeing in the future. Not to say that it's a foregone conclusion that that's going to get approved, but right now, these access points were identified as a potential. And the county, I believe, agreed to those in concept. However, it is a county roadway system. They can give it and they can take it.
Yep.
And today we had a plat commission meeting, and they were, I think, thrilled to know that they were not having any access points on 42 up there. So, and I imagine they would probably feel the same way on the west side, but again, that's farther down the road. And if there's a need or use that would like to have that, there might be a possibility for them to accommodate that later down.
I would imagine it would be similar to what we just were looking at tonight with the McDonald's and the fact that you don't have direct access from 42, and the fact that there's a central street or roadway that you would be turning on and then gaining access to those various
Correct.
businesses that would be designated along there?
Yes.
Okay.
Obviously, the selection of those access points, safety is going to be the paramount
Oh, yeah.
rule of the day. And if the county says, I don't care what your map says, you're not getting it, it's going to be, you're not getting it, so.
Thanks again,
Yep.
Again, appreciate it.
Commissioner Schindler?
Madam Chair, Tim, one more time.
Yep.
So if we make this change, and it just becomes mixed business campus, what are the underlying rules behind how it has to be developed?
It would still be, Commissioner Schindler, members of the commission, so it would still be allowed for a light industrial office, I think it's a light industrial, hotels, office, commercial retail. So that mixture is still available. It's just, it's more wide open for them to develop it with those varying or various uses or land uses as they deem fit.
So in theory, they could come back and say, we're just going to do the whole thing residential.
Not residential, no.
Or they could pick one use and say the whole thing's going to be that use.
Yeah, if they came in and said, we want to do everything light industrial, they could do that under that NBC.
All right, well, that doesn't seem to be in any benefit of the city.
Yeah, but I don't know if that would happen with the odds. Commissioner Pruitt?
Yeah, thanks, Chair Kurtz. Tim, so there's a reference in the staff report of a market study.
Yes.
Obviously, there's a request to eliminate the percentages, but it's pretty easy to read that there's the office percentages of 55 to 65 is going down. Did the city receive any information on what those percentages might be? Did the study provide, hey, it's going to be 90% industrial, or was it just to dismiss the percentages that were included prior to this request?
Commissioner Pruitt, members of the commission, I could probably let the developer respond more eloquently, but I haven't read that market report for a while, but it was a study that was commissioned by the developer, presented to staff early in my tenure, about 2 years ago. Basically, it indicated or demonstrated that this plan really doesn't work for the current situation, the current economic situations. especially the office environment or the office uses. They felt that, their consultant felt that they should go back and just, reevaluate the land uses that are being planned for this area and probably downgrade or downgrade, I should say, the need for offices in this area. It's just, it was probably going to be an unmet challenge for the developer or the owners of the site to bring in a large-scale campus, especially after seeing Thomson Reuters, Blue Cross Blue Shield, and down the road. All these local office users were just shutting down or eliminating their office needs. So that's kind of what the study provided, was an indicator that, hey, we'd like to do a little bit more than just office or heavy office use. We'd like to provide for other opportunities across the board. And still keep in mind, or keep the mixed business campus as the underlying land use, but fill it in with uses that are being brought to them as, hey, we like to develop it with this. So the study was good information, but it just, it helped, but it's, sometimes you take that information for what it's worth, and you can either accept it or basically not accept it. And it's just what we felt working with the applicant over the course of my 2 years of being here, that this is something that they're requesting. Is it reasonable? That remains to be seen. I will tell you this, when it comes to land use applications, the comp plan amendment or changing the land use in your comp plan, you have the highest discretion. You can just, meaning you can either choose to accept it or don't. You don't have to give reasons why. Your comp plan has set the tone for the next 20 years, but we change it every 10, or we update or reevaluate every 10 years. And we're about to ready, believe it or not, about 2 years, we're going to be working on our comp plan again, believe it or not. So, and we're going to go through that whole exercise again. We can, at that time, re-examine this area, because this is probably still going to be a very hot area that we want to make sure that we can examine, look at the economic forces, and find out, are we on track or are they on track? Is it still going to be successful? Can we provide areas for job creations? That's important. We all agree that. And, some of the uses that you're seeing being developed, they're really not big job creators, but do they still bring a hearty tax base to the community? Sure they do. And so you have to balance all that out. And we're more than welcome to look at that in a few years, but for now, the application before you tonight is just to say, take this away, and just let us go back to MBC.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Halas?
Tim, tell me if I'm wrong, but what you're asking for is that giving the opportunity for them to find people and bring them to us, and for these land opportunities. And then we take a look at and review and say, yeah, this does fit to what we're looking for the city and what we're looking to go do in the future. But this opens the door with as you were saying, as things are changing,
Yes.
gives them other opportunities to grab other people that are looking for something a little bit different than what we've done in the past.
Correct. And we've also taken solicitations from Greater MSP, and DEED has asked cities to consider a new development, they always have a funky project name with these, and because they want to keep the privacy of it. But sometimes they'll send us that information, hey, city, do you have 50 acres that could be used for this chip manufacturer or something, or a bottling plant or something? And when you have land that's available, yeah, we might. Or if a new hotel group, or if a new, heavens, if we got a great medical office, manufacturing facility that really wanted to be here, this would be ideal for them. And we would steer them over to Rockport and say, let's work with these people and get them in here. So yeah, not only for them, but for us, because their success is our success, and we're here to help them. And we don't want them to be, we don't want this to falter or sit vacant for the next 15, 20 years. As I'm sure they don't either, but, at this point, we're trying to do a little pivoting here. And you could blame economic forces on that, but this is also a special request made by the developer or the owners to give consideration to their needs right now, because they do have someone that is willing to take over a large section of this land for a specific use.
I just look at certain concepts, and I'll revert to, just for an example, the Southdale. It was a mall for many years. Now, if you look at what they've got going there, they've got a grocery store in them, and they've got people that are looking to live right there. They've got a Lifetime Fitness built within there. They've got rental office space within there. Things change. It gives them more opportunities to change those land uses.
Sure.
And this is something that might be 5 years or 10 years down the line before it happens, but it gives them opportunities to actually bring people to our attention.
It does. It potentially does.
Yeah.
Commissioner Sandell?
Madam Chair, Tim, if we were to approve this, we would have less right to say no to a certain type of development, because we would have to stick with our percentages. But we also are able to have a variance or something from those percentages. Is that true? Is that not true? Like, where are our hands tied on either side of this? Does that make sense? I don't know if that question makes sense.
You want to take this one?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Madam Chair, so let me put in Cliff Notes what the request is. There's three. So the primary one is the figure 4.2. That's in the comp guide. It is part of the comp guide. 4.2 says, these are the uses that are allowed, but this is where they are to go. And the uses that are allowed, these are the percentages. So that kind of goes to your question. Their primary request is to remove figure 4.2 out of the comp guide. So what effectively that means is that all the uses that are listed on that chart will still be in the mixed business, but they can go anywhere. And they could have just one use. It's called mixed business, but that doesn't mean there's going to be a mix of business. So if they have an industrial user, it can go. And if we take out figure 4.2, and also there is text in there, taking out the percentages, then there's no longer percentages. So it kind of goes to the former statement I just said. That's their, and Mr. Duffy can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's really the gist of their request.
Would it be possible to do half the blob?
Well, not today. The application is the application.
Okay.
So.
Good. Commissioner Scanlon?
Madam Chair, Kim, to Commissioner Schindler's comment that we get rid of the percentages and we could come back and one of those that are listed there, they could come back and say, we're going to do 100% or 95% under this one area.
Yep.
And can we kind of think of it as a compromise or a way of looking at it instead of just take away the percentages, but put something in there to minimize protect against going 95% in one area versus, and not run into a situation like that would happen. Because I understand what, they've been coming back, it's every time they come back with a project and the difficulty in trying to, find somebody to build within the guidance of what we have here. So I'm sensitive to that and listening to that. But I'm also have a concern if we just take away the percentages that something comes back to us and it's going to take and just be one thing, or just one of those areas, or majority of one of those.
Sure.
Attorney Hill wants to answer
Go
that.
ahead.
Madam Chair, so the application is before you. It is their application for an amendment, it's
Right.
not the city's.
Right.
So you must act on the application.
Okay.
It's not for the commission then to make its revisions to theirs. If the applicant wants to amend their amendment request, they can certainly do that.
Okay.
But
Well, thank you. I appreciate the clarification. That helps. Thank you.
One more. Commissioner Schindler.
Up to this point, how many companies, people have been turned away because of the way that this is written? Has the city said, nope, that won't work because of the way that this is set up?
Commissioner Schindler, members of the commission, I don't know if I can properly address that because usually they're dealing directly with the developer or their real estate professional. So I really can't answer that. Do we get inquiries? I think we've had a few marijuana dispensary or marijuana facilities that have asked about, hey, what about this area? We said no, because it doesn't meet our cannabis ordinance requirements. So there's been a few of those, but I can't really put a number on it. If the developer wants to share that, or the consultants want to share that, you're more than free to ask that. But typically, whenever a group comes forward, they usually don't just cold call you and say, hey, where can I go? They usually do their homework, and they're working with a commercial broker or their own consultants, and they're searching for sites like these. And once they find a site, then they start their path towards working through the planner, the engineers, and everything else. But typically, it's just, there isn't a hard, fast number that I can provide for you tonight. But it does happen, and sometimes you're able to help them, sometimes you're not. And sometimes the site works, sometimes it doesn't. And usually it's the zoning that you're looking at, or they're looking at. Can your zoning allow for this?
And the zoning can.
Right now, there is no zoning. It's sand and gravel. So part of an application coming forward at next month's meeting will be for a brand-new mixed-use business campus zoning.
Okay. No more questions, so let's have the applicant come up. Thank you, Tim, for all
You're
those
welcome.
answers.
Good evening, Madam Commissioner and Commissioners. My name is Matt Duffy. I'm representing Rockport. Rockport's owned by the Fisher family. The Fisher family has been down here for decades. I think this commission, the city council, city staff, all knows who the Fisher family are. They're reputable people. They do good work in this city. They've done really good work in the city. They've done a lot of things for this city. The city's done a lot of things for them. I think they're appreciative, very much so, about the things the city does for them. The Orchard Place development was a little bit of a controversial development, at least from our perspective, some of the pushback we received initially about it. But I think it's turned into quite a robust development from our perspective. So I think the idea that this property is, I think it's very important to them to develop it well, develop it right, develop the way it should be developed. I think it's important for you all to have that input in the things that we're trying to do and things that Rockport's trying to do. So I think going forward, I think we're all in lockstep. I think we're all looking at this the same way. I think we're all looking at this as a sort of a legacy opportunity to really develop something cool, useful, and kind of an amenity to the city, right? I think that's really the end game here. I think we're all coming at that, maybe coming at it from a different angle, from different sides of that. Obviously, you have your job to do, you have your work to do through the commission and everything to make sure that it matches what the commission and what the city expects it to look like. But I think so far, the proof is in the pudding and what they have done. I think they've done a very good job. Obviously, somewhat biased in that opinion, but I think they've done a good job of developing attractive land. So I think some of the questions here tonight, they're very good questions, certainly questions that need to be asked, and we appreciate that. I think I can go and answer a couple of the questions. First of all, I think one of the things that's been talked about is this idea that we would come in with one single use for the whole property. Well, first of all, that probably isn't going to be the case. I would say it's probably 95 to 99% certain that it wouldn't be one single user. It would come down and take down the whole property and do it one single use. That's very unlikely. Second of all, the city already has a mechanism in place to prevent that from happening. It's called the AUAR process. The AUAR would have to be updated. Right now, the AUAR contemplates this mixed business campus idea. So if one single user came in, say an industrial user, for example, because those generally are more intense, harder on a surrounding area, and the impacts that result from an AUR are that. We would have to measure that. So the AUR process would kick in. We'd be likely having to do an AUR update. We'd likely have to come before all of you again and explain why we went to one single use versus a mixed business campus and try to articulate a good reason why that was the case when it's not likely to happen. So there is that safeguard in place. Right now, the AUR is what it is. It says this is a mixed business campus. That's what it's going to be. So that's kind of the starting point. Another component of the mixed-use business campus, I think, was maybe not talked about real in depth, although thank you, Director Benetti, for handing us off in such a well-rounded fashion. There is a mixed-use business campus ordinance draft that's been bouncing through various iterations through the city staff and things that will ultimately govern the uses on this property. The ROCKPORT has been active in its review of it and discussions with the city staff about how they think it should look, but it has uses that are associated with that. Part of what we're asking for tonight is to align what ROCKPORT views, and again I'll go into that in a little bit more detail, as the study was mentioned a little earlier by Commissioner Pruitt, but it aligns itself a little bit more with the market forces that we're seeing. Our revisions, our requested revisions align themselves with the feedback that we've received from developers and through the process of marketing this property. So that those uses, those ideas that have come through the revision process and the draft ordinance are coming at us from industry experts, people that are outside this market, outside Apple Valley, outside of this necessarily region, northern Dakota County, excuse me. And so we've taken that information and we've applied it to sort of what we're trying to do. Like I said, I think the goal from everybody in this room is to develop this property in a way that's meaningful and a good amenity for the city itself. So that's what we're up to. And so what's driving that is some input. Russ McGinty is here. He's the broker who handles all these phone calls from all of the people who could be, in theory, be interested in this property. And he's on the front lines, so to speak, about what this is and what this looks like. One of the questions was asked whether there's been any users that have walked away from this property. There have been some very large users. A biotech user walked away from this property. A large warehousing and distribution company walked away from this property. These were large companies that would have had employed, probably 100 or more, 150 more people each. High-paying, had a household jobs, very high-end sorts of managerial positions, sales jobs, and things. So that's been part of what's going on. It's not necessarily driving everything that we're bringing up here, but that's certainly part of the consideration, and that's part of what we've brought to bear at the city with these requests to the comprehensive guide plan. I believe one of the other questions, forgive me, can't read my own handwriting, so the jobs question, I believe that was Commissioner Scanlon's question. The roadways from this map, I will tell you, based on our conversations with Dakota County, we have, I think, 2 accesses only off of 42. Maybe, engineer, does that mesh with your recollection? I don't want to overspeak or undersell. I think it's 2, right?
Generally correct. Dakota County weighs in on the access spacing. Johnny Cake being the primary. And I believe, this plan shown before you is well before my time, but that's a general access spacing to be expected. So
I think there's 2 from my recollection. So this map is out of date. for that reason. And some of the feedback we've gotten from some retail users is because there's no right in, right out, right off of 42, that the limitations for their use, their retail use, is they prefer to be back in off of 42 so that people can come in and circulate back through and go back out, rather than come in and it's complicated. I don't pretend to understand how it works because that's not my role, but that's what we've been told. So that's one of the reasons why the preference argument has been, you know, if we get somebody that comes in and says, yeah, we'd love to, but we can't really back up there, we got to move back. Plus, there's some consideration, some significant grade changes there. There's a greenway pathway that's going through there. It's going under 42 right there. So there's a lot of constraints that are because of the site the way it is and things like that. That's the reason why we've asked for that, because that's some of the questions. Is the city open to that? Maybe is the answer we give. A part of it is they're concerned about pursuit costs, which is what these developers talk about, because it's some area that they can control. They can't control cost of construction materials. They can't control labor very well, but they do what they can. So that's what we're trying to do, is help control pursuit costs, so to the extent we can. I think one of the other things, and maybe I should have started with this, is this figure 4.2 has sort of unique history in the city. This was developed, or not developed, it was discussed and rendered based on a conversation that Rockport was having with a large national real estate developer. It was a concept plan. We were just looking at it to see what it would look like. We were doing some calculations with the city on what this would all look like alongside there, but this was never intended to be a development plan. This was developed by Rockport. This developer ultimately, at the end of the day, based on the numbers that were projected to them, they walked away from it. They said, we can't do this. It's not going to work for us. We're done. So they walked away from it. When the city added this to their comp guide plan, Rockport was not, well, they didn't want it as part of the comp guide plan, to put it mildly. So when it became into the comp guide plan, we've always been concerned about its use for this purpose. We don't mind the mixed use business campus. In fact, we're actively working with the city on the draft ordinance for that. But this was never going to necessarily be a workable plan from our standpoint. You know, there are elements that we can, certainly there are uses that we can, but the percentages were always a problem for us. Because if somebody comes in with something that we didn't think about, now we've got to come in and get a comprehensive guide plan amendment. And if it becomes part of the ordinance, which it was part of the draft ordinance that we saw, this figure is part of the draft ordinance, and we'd have to ask for an amendment to the text of your ordinance as well, which is problematic from a pursuit cost standpoint for us. So part of it is just trying to align, I think, expectations and align what we're hearing on the front lines with your ordinance, understanding the city has multiple layers of approval that they go through. They go through the concept sketch plan review, they do plating, they do conditions for that. If it's a conditional use, and they do conditional use for that. So we understand that there's all these areas where the city gets involved. And obviously, if the use that comes in is something that's not congruent with the current AUAR, we have to do an AUR update too. So there's all these layers that kind of figure in behind all this. So even if this isn't there, it's not part of your comp guide plan, it's not part of your ordinance, there are ways, there are backstop mechanisms in place in your current current ordinance structure and your current planning structure that backstop these concerns that you have. I understand your concerns. I do land use all over the Twin Cities. Your concerns are exactly the concerns that all of the Planning Commission, all the city councils have. And they should be the concerns. It's great. It's part of the process. It's how it works. So we're all in favor of that. As far as the market study question that was asked, and I'm a little off topic. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to address the questions that were asked. So those out in front. Rockport commissioned a study by a firm called Maxfield Research. They're a very reputable local firm. This is what they do. They do market research, absorption rate research to figure out what uses are going to be absorbed in what time frame, are we going to get premium dollars, are we going to get less than premium, those kind of things. And we use that information, Russ uses that information when he markets the property. So yeah, there is a motivation for Rockport to do this market study. It's what it is. But it's designed because we want to market this property, we want to develop this property to its highest and best use. That's the goal, to be an amenity for the city. So the market study itself was an important aspect of it. I will read you just some of the summary from the Maxfield Research study. And this has been shared with city staff as well. Maxfield concluded the city's proposed percentage allocations, which is what we're talking about here and what's in your comp guide plan, do not coincide with current and/or projected market conditions for office, industrial, commercial use in the Apple Valley or the surrounding northern Dakota County area. This is their conclusion. I can provide the study if people want to read it. I'm happy to provide it. There's nothing secret about it. It is what it is. The next line, they say, based on current and projected future market conditions, the proposed allocations contained in the mixed-use business ordinance, because again, this figure was part of the draft ordinance that we were reviewing, for office and industrial uses, which are derived directly from the comprehensive guide plan, which is what this is, are not realistic over the next 10 years at Rockport's property, even in the broader market study area, which is the northern Dakota County. Finally, Maxfield concluded the mixed-use business campus ordinance percentage uses, again, which are derived from your comp guide plan, will have a negative development impact on Rockport's property, including reducing market interest in the property and, sorry, I forgot my glasses at home, so I'm doing my best here, and decreasing potential development on the property. I apologize, I should have had them with me, but I forgot them. So that's what they've concluded, and so this is a third party doing this. The concern that we have, obviously, is that we don't want to be stuck with something we can't market. So that really goes to the second request that we made, and maybe I should have started with that. The first one is that the commercial research, I think I covered that they should be moved back. We should have the opportunity to move them back away from 42 in case we get a request. And obviously the city will weigh in on that as we go through the process. The second one is to remove references to the percentages of the mixed-use business campus, and I think Tim did an excellent job of explaining what those are and how they work, so I don't want to go through those again. And that's in page 28 of the comp guide plan. I know there's other pages as well, but those are the ones that we were talking about as well. The next was the adding the industrial use, excuse me, again my eyes, remove references. The mixed-use business campus from the property west of Johnny Cake. That property likely will not be developed by the time your new 2030 comp guide plan comes into play, based on market absorption of aggregate material and our leases with McNamara family. As I'm sure most of you know, AVR sold to McNamara last year. So now they are just a landlord on the property that used to mine. So McNamara is the one we have our leases with them go through at least that period of time. So we expect that that will continue for at least the foreseeable future. So what we're talking about is west of Johnny Cake Ridge Road, excuse me. And the reason for that is if there are opportunities that present themselves, because there are areas that right now, in theory, could be used out if we needed to and be used for development. We don't anticipate that being it, but if opportunity presented itself and it was something that was intriguing, we would want the opportunity to do that, which is the reason why we're asking right now. And since we're in here asking, obviously for the city to do a heavy lift for us, we're trying to do it as a cohesive, here's what we're asking for kind of thing. So we're not piecemealing it, or it doesn't feel like we're trying to game the system by piecemealing it. We're trying to come in just sort of very transparent, say here's what we need. So that's one of the that's kind of what we're thinking of there as it relates to that. I think Director Benetti covered a lot of what I have to say here. And then finally, the third component was adding industrial to Area C, which is in Figure 4.2, which is on the east side of future Johnny Cake Ridge Road, to accommodate a use that it sounds like will be coming in the next couple of weeks. I'm not at liberty to discuss that. We're under an NDA. So I can say that it's something that Area C the industrial needs to be added to that so that it can go forward from there. I feel like I covered a lot of information, and I apologize if I missed something or a question. I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Sure. Before we go there, I think we're going to take a 5-minute break, okay?
Sure.
Okay. Do I have to do this? So give us a 5-minute break.
No, I could use a drink of water myself, so, thank you. Yes.
Questions for Matt, any commissioners? Commissioner Pruitt?
Yes, if I could, please, and it sounds like there's, thank you, Chair Kurtz. If I could, please, there's maybe more going on to the story here, east and west of Johnny Cake.
Yep.
Maybe the NDA precludes you from commenting, but I was curious if you were able to expand on the request for removal of, the comprehensive guide plan figure 4.2 on the west side of Johnny Cake Ridge and not the east side. Why the separation there?
And again, this is after discussions. I mean, in a very high level, if it's easier to remove figure 4.2 in its entirety from the comp guide plan, that would work fine for Rockport. There was some consideration of that through some conversations that we had with city staff. We decided to break it up from west to east. But the reason for the removal from the west side is just for that reason. Part of it is we don't anticipate this property west of Johnny Cake developing in a manner like this. The uses certainly, but not the way that this is. We do get inquiries. The inquiries are, and again, this is more Russ's area than mine, so I'll try to be delayed on that. But the inquiries, when this is out there, we get a lot of questions is, well, can we do this and this and this? And the answer is maybe. But they're not gonna, again, if it's a cost-based thing, if they can't do it and they can't get certainty to it, they walk away. We've had 2 users that just simply walked away because they couldn't get certainty. And it wasn't anything the city was doing or not doing, or anything that we were doing or not doing. It's just, that's just how fickle these people are, these developers are, these land users are. They're just, if they can't get an answer that they like, they just say they walk. And so part of it is that we want to have the flexibility to come back and say, yeah, I mean, here's the mixed-use business campus ordinance, here's what it says, here's are the users that are allowed, here are some considerations you need to consider, like there's an AUR right now, if you need to update the AUR, which is occurring for the use that's east of John E. Cake Ridge Road, then that's what they have to do, they understand that. So again, the idea, and again, I don't keep me picking at this, but it's highly unlikely that one user would come in and take that whole thing down, or it'd be one use. There's a variety of reasons, mainly because of the AUR, but the other one is that we have to contain water. And water's really expensive to contain, so it'd be really, really hard, or have to be a very special offer for us to consider a single use or a single user over there. But the simple answer is, from a marketing standpoint, it's very complicated to have that over this laying on top of it, because our preference is that none of the percentages are there at all, because we think, based on the market study that we have and based on the conference and the things that we're getting back, that these percentages aren't realistic, at least from what we're hearing. So having that as part of this discussion, now they have to come in for a comp guide plan amendment. They have to ask for a zoning change if the mixed-use business campus puts this into the ordinance. There's all these things that start complicating that picture. And having this as part of that complicates that picture for us.
But mainly on the west side.
Mainly on the west side. The east side, there is the third request, as I have it.
Sure.
And again, I'll tell you what I know. They want an industrial use in the area C. That's what I know. So, and the AUR is being updated to review this use. So, beyond that, that's about as much as I can go and do.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Guess you did a thorough job.
Well, I'm open to answer questions, and I'm glad that, thank you for your consideration tonight. I really appreciate it. And I know that Liza and Peter both appreciate your time and efforts on their behalf. So,
Well, I would just echo what you said. I know the Fishers, and I know that they wouldn't just put anything or anybody in there. I mean, not only is it a stamp of Apple Valley, but it's also a stamp of the Fishers, and they choose very wisely. So
this is
I
a
will
very,
echo what you say on that.
the sale of their business and the sale of this property is a very emotional event for them.
Yeah.
I know it's hard to believe with Peter and Liza, but it is. This has been in their property, their family a long time, and they feel very connected to it. So,
Agreed. Thank you.
thank you for your time. Thank you for everything.
Thank you.
And Russ, you want to?
Anything new to add to it or anything, or?
Just a little.
Okay.
Madam Chair, Planning Commission members, my name is Russ McGinty, commercial real estate broker with North Central Commercial Real Estate. I've worked with the Fishers for over 30 years. A couple of things I would just point out. The size of the pit, just to give you some perspective, the blue area up there, a Mall of America would fit in there and you'd still have about 30 acres left. The pit is very large. You could take all of downtown Minneapolis and put in that colored area and you'd still have land left over. So it's hard to get a perspective for just how large this area is. Matt touched on it, but we're looking for larger users. We'd love to do 10 acres, put a 100,000 square foot industrial, but you can't afford to do that because that pond up north and the infrastructure to put in is $3.5–4 million. So you need some larger users. So that's been our focus, is try to find somebody larger. We mentioned we've lost a couple users. It had to do with the zoning and the time it takes to get that changed. We've been working on this for 2.5 years, and those users just won't wait around that long, so they left. Part of along 42, why it makes more sense to just have one user, there's going to be some dramatic grade changes coming off 42 down into where the other development potentially would occur. it's not conducive for smaller users to be up there. The access would be difficult. Two of those access roads up in the pink we know are already going away, so there just wouldn't be real convenient access. And then lastly, my last comment really is on the reclamation. Part of this area has been reclaimed, and as soon as the property's reclaimed, the taxes have gone up dramatically. That forces the hand of the owners that they need to do something with it because it gets very costly to hold that property for any length of time. If you have any other questions, otherwise that's it.
It's not. Thank you for speaking.
Thank you.
So let's not forget, this is a public hearing. So is there anybody in the audience that would like to come up to the platform and talk? No? Okay. Please state your name and your address.
Hi, my name is Cindy Davis. I'm at 169 Streetsea Lane here in Apple Valley. Thank you, Commissioner, Madam Chair. I didn't realize we were going into such depth today, but you know, I've been a resident here for quite a while. I've also heard the cat running around out of the bag on potential plans for this area, and I know that there's a lot of pressures to make, you know, the best use of the properties, you know, that the city has. And I just hope that whatever ends up happening in this development, that all of the environmental best practices are considered, whether it's water usage or energy consumption, that renewable options are on the table for renewable energy sources, that there are best practices in mind for any kind of heat dissipation, closed loop type systems to reuse that energy, geothermal to provide energy, all of the best practices, right? And including ground cover, you know, native ground cover is always the best choice. It does the best support for our ecosystems and our water infiltration, which is very important. I spoke in front of the city council a couple years ago. They were doing their water, there was something related to their wellhead plans, and I'm not sure if everybody here is aware, but our aquifer, Apple Valley is largely supplied by our groundwater aquifers for our drinking water. This area in particular is kind of in that well area, so a lot of extra special considerations for that area. And if you weren't already aware, just ever since development started, way back when this area first, you know, was settled and was starting to be developed in, like, especially the 50s, our groundwater is in a state of net decline. So when I did speak to the city council a couple years ago, at that time there was not a plan to address that. So I just hope, again, with whatever usage ends up coming in here, that these very specific factors are considered for any, you know, potential use on this site. So thank you very much.
Sounds good. Thank you for your input. Anyone else? No? Okay. With that, I'm going to close the public hearing. If there are no further comments, I will close this public hearing. It is the policy of the Planning Commission not to act on an item on the same night as the public hearing. The Planning Commission will weigh all comments and information received tonight in its deliberations at future meetings. This item will continue to appear on future Planning Commission agendas until a recommendation on the petition can be forwarded to City Council. So, with that.
Thank you, Madam Commissioner, or Madam Chair and members of the Commission. So what we're going to be bringing back forward at the next meeting, either February 5th or 19th, is reconsideration of this matter. And I would hope that you give careful thought to this, what you've heard tonight. We'll provide any updated information that we can provide, answer some of the questions that were, if we need to, that were asked tonight. I think Mr. Duffy and Mr. McGinty did a great job. Also, we're going to give very careful consideration to the environmental concerns that have been raised by some of our residents. We're very cognizant, understanding that there's a potential large-scale development coming our way, and we've addressed, or we've asked them to make sure that they don't forget about that. We have some ideas and some suggestions, and I think you're going to later on see some of that. So without opening up the bag even further on that one, I'm just going to say, wait for it. It's coming. You're going to have a very, very busy meeting on the February 5th, so be prepared for that night. I hope you can all make it. Stay safe and healthy.
Thank you. Is that all of your updates then, too?
Yeah, why not?
You've spoken enough tonight. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
That was motioned by Commissioner Scanlon and seconded by Commissioner Halas. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This meeting has ended.